You walk out to the garden on a Tuesday morning in July, and something is wrong before you even reach the fence. The tomato leaves that were green on Sunday are curling at the edges, going a kind of gray-green you have never seen on a healthy plant. By Thursday, there are black patches on the stems that look like something has burned them from the inside. By the following Monday, the whole row is dead, and the smell, that wet, rotting, almost sweet smell of blight, is thick enough that you can pick it up from the porch. You have sprayed. You bought the copper fungicide from the garden center. You bought the systemic one your neighbor recommended. You rotated your crops the way every gardening blog told you to. None of it mattered. The blight came anyway, the way it comes for almost every home gardener east of the Mississippi at least once every few summers, and it took 6 weeks of work and a freezer full of tomatoes you were counting on for winter sauce. Now drive 4 miles down the road, past the state highway, past the co-op, onto a gravel lane in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, and look at Amos Stoltzfus's garden. Same July, same humidity, same rain pattern, because it is the same sky. His tomato vines are 7 feet tall, dark green, loaded, and there is not a single blackened leaf anywhere in that quarter acre. His potatoes are the same. So are his cucumbers, which is a crop that gets downy mildew so reliably in this climate that most extension offices simply tell you to expect it. He has not sprayed a single commercial fungicide in his life. He does not know what chlorothalonil is, and his garden has not lost a season to blight in the 20-some years his family has kept it. That is not luck. That is not a better microclimate, because his garden sits lower than most of his neighbors, in a spot that should, by every rule of plant pathology, be more prone to fungal pressure, not less. What Amos and families like his are doing is running what I am going to call the copper system for the rest of this video, a set of 4 specific practices, most of them almost 150 years old, that together create a growing environment where blight simply cannot establish itself the way it establishes itself in a conventional home garden. I found the core of it documented, almost by accident, in an old French agricultural account of a vineyard in the Bordeaux region, and I found the version the Amish actually use passed down the way most of their knowledge is passed down, not in a book, but at a kitchen table, over coffee, from a man who inherited it from his father. Stay to the end, because the 4th part of this system is the one almost nobody talks about, even inside the Amish community, and it is the part that actually explains why the copper works as well as it does, instead of just slowing the disease down for a week or two the way most home remedies do. I want to be honest about something before I go any further. I used to be exactly the gardener I described a minute ago. I ran a fungicide rotation every 10 to 14 days from June through August, chlorothalonil 1 week, a copper product the next, because that is what every extension bulletin and every gardening forum told me to do. I spent close to $200 a season on product, plus a backpack sprayer, plus the gas to drive to the farm supply store every time I ran out. And I still lost entire plantings some years. I remember standing in my garden in August of 2018 looking at a row of Cherokee purples I had started from seed in February, watching black lesions crawl up stems I had babied for 6 months, and thinking that this was simply the price of growing tomatoes in a humid climate. I thought blight was weather. I did not yet understand that it is mostly management. The turning point for me was a conversation with Amos, who I had gone to buy seed potatoes from on the recommendation of another farmer. I asked him, mostly to make conversation, what he sprayed for blight. He looked at me the way you look at someone who has just asked a strange question, and he said, "Not we treated early," or "We're lucky this year. We don't get it." I pushed him on it, because I did not believe him, and he walked me through his garden and showed me exactly what I'm about to show you. Some quick history, because it matters for understanding why this actually works, instead of just sounding like folklore. Copper as a fungal treatment was not invented by anyone Amish. It goes back to 1885, to a vineyard in the Médoc region of France, where farmers were mixing copper sulfate with lime and painting it onto grapevines along the roadside specifically to make the fruit look poisoned so that passers-by would stop stealing it. A plant scientist named Pierre-Marie-Alexis Millardet noticed, almost as an aside, that the treated vines along that road were not getting downy mildew while every other vine in the vineyard was. That accidental discovery became what is still called Bordeaux mixture, and it is genuinely one of the oldest continuously used fungicides in agricultural history. It made its way into American farming manuals by the early 1900s. And it is where the Amish version of this system starts, though it is not where it ends, because the mixture alone is only the first of the 4 layers. Layer 1 is the spray itself, and the Amish version is not the pre-mixed copper fungicide you buy at a garden center. It is copper sulfate crystals, the kind sold as a root killer or pond treatment additive, mixed at a low concentration with hydrated agricultural lime and water. The lime does 2 things. It buffers the copper so it does not burn plant tissue at the concentration needed to actually kill fungal spores, and it makes the mixture stick to the leaf surface through rain in a way that plain copper solution does not. A pound of copper sulfate costs under $10 and will make enough spray for an entire season on a home garden plot. A pound of hydrated lime costs about the same. Compare that to a commercial fungicide program running anywhere from $150 to $300 over a season for the same size plot. And you are looking at roughly a 20-to-1 cost difference for a product that, when mixed correctly, actually outperforms most of what is sold in stores, because most store products are formulated to be diluted for large-scale spraying equipment and end up underdosed for the way a home gardener applies them by hand. Layer 2 is timing, and this is where most gardeners who have tried copper sprays and given up went wrong, including me. Copper is a protectant, not a cure. It sits on the leaf surface and prevents fungal spores from germinating when they land, but it does nothing once the fungus is already inside the plant tissue. Amish does not wait for the first sign of disease the way I did. He starts spraying the week the plants go into the ground, before there is any visible pressure at all, and he reapplies every 7 days regardless of what the plants look like, not every 10 to 14 the way the commercial products recommend, because copper breaks down faster in UV light and rain than most labels admit. That single change, weekly instead of bi-weekly, applied before symptoms rather than after, is probably worth more than the mixture itself, and it costs nothing extra beyond the spray you would be doing anyway. Layer 3 is where it stops being just a spray and starts being a system, and it is the part almost no home gardener does. Amish edges his garden beds, and the beds of blight-prone crops specifically, with copper flashing, the same thin sheet copper used for roof valleys and chimney caps, buried a few inches into the soil around the perimeter of each bed. Copper strips like this have been used against slugs for decades because the metal creates a mild electrical charge that repels soft-bodied pests. But what almost nobody talks about is the secondary effect on soil-borne fungal pathogens. As the copper very slowly oxidizes at the soil line, it releases trace copper ions into the top layer of soil, which suppresses the fungal spores that overwinter in soil and splash up onto lower leaves, which is one of the primary ways early blight in particular reinfects a garden year after year, even when you rotate crops. A roll of copper flashing runs about $30 to $40 and will edge several beds and last, realistically, decades, because copper does not rust or rot. Layer 4 is the one I promised you at the start, and it is the one that took me the longest to actually understand, because on its face it sounds like folk superstition. Amish drives a short length of copper wire, about 4 inches, partway into the base of each tomato and potato plant stem once the plant is established, roughly 2 to 3 weeks after transplant. I will tell you exactly what I thought when he showed me this. I thought it was nonsense, a piece of old country ritual that had survived without any actual function, the kind of thing that gets passed down because nobody wants to be the one who stops doing what their father did. But there is an actual mechanism here that a retired plant pathology professor at a university extension office explained to me after I described what I had seen, and it comes down to systemic trace mineral uptake. A small, slow, continuous release of copper ions directly into the vascular system of the plant raises the copper concentration in the plant's own tissue over the growing season, at a level too low to be toxic to the plant, but high enough to make the internal environment measurably less hospitable to the fungi that cause blight once they do manage to breach the leaf surface. It will not stop an infection that has already taken hold, but combined with the spray and the soil-level copper from the flashing, it closes the loop on the disease from 3 directions instead of 1, which is the actual reason Amos's garden does not get blight, while a garden running only a store-bought spray still does. Amos holds a crucial detail he almost overlooked: watering technique. He avoids evening watering. Each blight-prone plant receives morning watering at the base. This allows leaves to dry all day before nightfall, preventing fungal growth. While this isn't a secret technique, few apply all 5 crucial methods simultaneously throughout the season. Extension resources discuss each aspect separately. Most gardeners miss the link, unlike families with generations of gardening experience who naturally connect them. I sought formal research on Amos's approach, wanting more than one family's story. I found small regional trials from land-grant universities in the Northeast and Midwest. These trials from the 20th century tested copper-lime mixtures against blights in tomatoes and potatoes. They showed significant suppression when applied preventively and weekly, but results diminished if intervals exceeded 10 days. However, those trials did not specifically test soil edging or stem wire pieces. This highlights the gap between controlled agricultural science and multi-generational farm knowledge, which relies on effective combinations and discards the ineffective. I won't pretend this system is without limits. Channels that promise easy fixes often lose trust. Copper can be toxic to soil organisms if overused. It's not a treatment for severe blight infections. You need to destroy infected plants, as compost piles can't kill spores. Use copper sparingly in small plots, as there's limited soil to dilute it. Copper fungicides are hard to patent and market. Synthetic fungicides, developed post-1960s, are easier to sell. They require smaller doses and frequent applications, creating a cycle of repeat purchases. Old formulas like Bordeaux mixture aren't owned by companies and are less profitable. I spoke with Amos about his family's practices. His grandfather used copper flashing post-World War II, noting that healthy gardens aren't lucky, but well mineralized. Modern gardening often forgets this, but it leads to blight issues. If you've lost crops, understand you may not be at fault. Many systems are designed for repeat purchases, not real change. This channel preserves practical knowledge that isn't shared anymore. If you value this knowledge, consider subscribing